it renders the legislators and the legislature powerless again.
Governor Abbott right now won't call a special, and there's no mechanism in here for anybody to force a special outside of the governor.
We have to have a separation of powers, and it's not being followed.
Welcome back to another Shark Show. Today we're doing HB 3 from the Texas House. It's a bill authored by Representative Dustin Burrows that's going to need a lot of work going into the State Affairs Committee.
Whole lot of work.
Yeah.
So we're looking into this bill today and how it's going to affect us here in Hood County and throughout the state. And we wonder where, our Representative Glenn Rogers is and our State Senator Brian Birdwell is.
It would be nice to hear from them on this bill.
As we look into this bill, HB 3 has to do with relating to the state and local government responses to a pandemic disaster and creating a criminal offense. So we just went through this all last year, and as your state representative last year, I fought for the citizens and to take away some of these executive orders by Governor Abbott that were frankly unconstitutional.
Absolutely, they were unconstitutional, and there's a lot of people out there that would have very much liked to have been able to keep their businesses open and maintain their livelihood, and unfortunately that's not what we saw in the majority of the state.
Yeah, and a lot of people out there also wanted a special session to be called, which, King Abbott down there in Austin, he decided, no, I'm just going to run all this myself. The legislators can go pound sand, is basically what he said.
It's exactly what he said with all his executive orders, and then, going to the county level where, of course, our county judge and commissioner court, minus Dave Eagle at the time last year, went along with everything.
Every word of it.
And so, but they wanted that COVID money because they had to spend that COVID money.
Yeah, that nice new RV we just got. Hang on, not new. Pre-owned. It's only 16 years old. So.
Yeah. Going back to HB 3, let's hear from Senator Birdwell. Let's hear from Representative Glenn Rogers on what they think about this bill. If you look at some of the points, and we can go through a ton of points in here that really in state affairs, they need to do a lot of amendments, maybe even a whole committee sub on HB 3. They talk about following the U.S. Constitution, the Texas Constitution, and then they contradict themselves right away, right, Courtney?
Yeah, this bill is full of contradictions and doublespeak. When you first start out, it talks about following the Constitution, like you said, and then Governor Abbott being able to make these executive orders that have the force and effect of law. And it just, there's a lot of contradictories in here.
There is still a separation of powers problem in this.
Oh, absolutely. That was the whole argument last year when we were going through all this, was the separation of powers, that it exists for a reason. We have to have a separation of powers, and it's not being followed. And it's still not being followed in this proposed bill.
Yeah, and what Courtney's referring to there is HB 3 418 Alpha.004. This chapter does not grant the governor authority to enact law. But if you continue reading down in 418A.052, it says that his executive orders have the full force and effect of law. What kind of sense does that make? I don't understand it.
No, it doesn't. And that's the problem we got into last session. And I think they tried to follow, because we didn't have anything set for a pandemic. It was all for tornadoes, hurricanes, floods. And it was normally something that was over within a couple of days or maybe a few weeks. Now we have this pandemic that the governor's battling lawsuits right now.
Right.
And I'm on one of those lawsuits. But also, we don't want to have lawsuits. That's the whole purpose of doing HB 3, is to set in stone, what powers the governor has, what power the legislature has. Yet back to the Texas Constitution, where all three branches are involved and they're doing the right thing, and the executive branch doesn't overstep into the legislative branch.
And what's sad about this bill is that we have a legislator, Dustin Burrows, who is a Republican, who is trying to cede the authority of the legislators to the governor by saying that, hey, his executive orders have full force and effect of law. Now, there's also a clause in there, I forget where it is, that says the legislature can repeal this stuff at any time, but as we saw during this pandemic, if the legislature is not in session, it's never going to happen because the governor, at least Governor Abbott right now, won't call a special. And there's no mechanism in here for anybody to force a special outside of the governor.
And that's what we ran into last session. Zero mechanism, no way to call it back, full reign on the governor for any pandemic. We ran into all the mom and pop stores, the bars, all these places that could have put their own things in place to protect the citizens, to protect themselves during a pandemic, and the government stepped in and took over.
Right, that 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and here we are this far into it. And as a citizen, I don't think anyone is opposed to doing what's necessary to stop a pandemic. 2 weeks to flatten the curve, great. We can do what we need to do for 2 weeks, but to draw this out indefinitely, it's a complete overstep of power.
Guys, it is very important. We like to see our viewers and all citizens get engaged and informed. Please contact your legislator. If you're in Hood County, your legislators are Glenn Rogers for HD 60 and State Senator Brian Birdwell for Senate District 22.
Right, and I haven't seen a companion bill out of the Senate yet, but we need to know where they stand. Glenn Rogers is new, first term, so he's still trying to get used to things. But Brian Birdwell, Senator Birdwell, has been there for 10 plus years. He is the Senate pro tem. So if things can get done, I would think that we can get a lot of help from our Senator Brian Birdwell.
Absolutely. Reach out to him. Let him know where you stand on this bill. Let him know what you would like to see come out of his office in response to this bill.
Because right now, you look at HB 3, it renders the legislators and the legislature powerless again. And we don't want to go through this again. So this bill needs to be reworked and redone. I know we have some real conservative representatives there in the Freedom Caucus that will be working behind the scenes to help push this further right and to push this to be a good bill. So hopefully you're working hard. I know you are. Keep up the good work and keep the pressure on the Republicans that seem to tend to go left.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and we really appreciate all the hard work that y'all do that nobody knows, that nobody is the wiser for, but it definitely shows in the end, and we're grateful for that.
And, it's easy to sit back and throw bombs, but it's a lot harder to do what needs to be done in those meetings and getting stuff like 418A.052 struck out of the bill. That would change a lot of my problems. Having a deal added where we can have somebody else call a special session besides the governor, that would solve a lot of things. This bill is not totally ridiculous. It just needs a lot of work if it's going to pass. Guys, always, we appreciate your support. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, help us beat that Facebook algorithm that we're going up against. Also, if you want to support the show financially, we do sell these hats, these tumblers, and these t-shirts too.
Thank you for tuning in today. This is just a small portion of what HB3 is about. Hopefully it'll change during the process while it's in state affairs, goes through committees. And once again, if it hits the House floor, we need to make sure that our Senator Birdwell and Representative Rogers is aware of it and where they stand and try to help change this bill. We're shining the light on our local elected officials, our state officials that matter to Hood County and the rest of the state, and hopefully we can get our conservative officials moving the ball further right, not further left. Shark Show out.